All right, the good old-fashioned polyrhythms versus polymeters official statement. You don't know me? I'm Blake Hawley, founder of GSM and the founder of Systems for Creation. Now, this polyrhythm, polymeter thing is ancient, right? Obviously, it came up in Systems for Creation. So there's a functional differentiation here, and that's what the point of this video is. Now, right on the surface, you can associate your good old-fashioned polymeters with Meshuggah, okay? Meshuggah does polymeters. They literally never do polyrhythms except for the classic secret times that they actually do it. But when we talk about Meshuggah framework, we are literally only talking about polymeters. That's it. So what's the thing with Meshuggah, right? What's the thing with Meshuggah framework? It is the truncation. So that's the functional difference here, okay? A polymeter will always have a truncation. And that's simply because you have a fundamental time signature, right? In this case, in Meshuggah framework case, that's 4/4, right? And then above that fundamental time signature, you're grouping subdivisions, 8th notes, 16th notes, generally one of those two, in some kind of number, right? In Meshuggah's case, it's like these big numbers, like 37, right? Classic ligature marks, 37, 37, 37, 17, right? That's the classic. So you have a 37-16 polymeter over 4/4, right? And then there's going to be an inevitable truncation, in that case, a 17-16 truncation. So I've used this term beat cycle, right? So why do I use the term beat cycle? Well, because beat cycle describes the 37, right? It's a 37-note beat cycle, right? And the point is, saying beat cycle saves me the time of having to say 8th note, quarter note, 16th note. I don't have to talk about that. It's way better just be like, good old beat cycle, right? Cycle of beats. Whether they're 16ths, they're 8ths, doesn't matter. That's why I use the term beat cycle. So in the classic ligature marks, that beat cycle situation is 37 times 3 plus 17, 128. That is the definition of polymeters, right? Like, how many time signatures total do we have? How many meters total do we have in that situation? 3 total meters. You have the 37 beat cycle, you have the 17 beat cycle, and you have 4/4. You literally have 3 different meters in that situation. Polymeters, right? Functional definition. It's got that truncation. Now let's talk about polyrhythms, okay? So polyrhythms never have a truncation. Let's literally look at a polyrhythm here, right? So this is a 5/4 polyrhythm that we're gonna listen to. Now listen to it. That's a song right there. That is the point of polyrhythms and polymeters in the first place. They write songs like that. That's a song. That's already the song. All you have to do is extrapolate. But that's it. Now, here's where it makes a ton of sense, right? 5/4 polyrhythm. Let's compare that to a 5/16 polymeter over 4/4. Let's compare it. Look at this, right? These suckers are grouped in 5, right? Totally different thing here, right? That's your polymeter side of things, right? So your 5/16 polymeter, right? Like, listen to how that sounds, right? Same tempo, right? It's ultimately epic, right? And that's already a song, right? Like, what's the first thing to do on that? This is already the song. That's the song. Ready? It's the song. And this one, the one that hits on the second 16th note of beat 2 is like, ah! That's what I'm saying, right? Notice how this is like so basic. This is basic levels we're talking about. In System for Creation, we take this into the tippy top of the pyramid. But this is your foundation, right? You see, it's very, very straightforward. It's very, very simple. And you see, obviously there's some kind of relationship between polymeters and polyrhythms, right? It's 2 different speeds happening at once, right? And now both of these give the effect of like, well, you can jump the track, right? You can switch the tempo, right? So how does that, you know what, I'm just gonna show you like blatantly, right? So if I take a grouping of 5 here, right, this grouping of 5/16 notes that's happening over this 4/4 tempo, And then I just literally continue those without having the fundamental time signature in there. I just jump the track, right? Straight up systematic tempo change. And if I were to do that, this is, I'm getting into composition now, but this is okay. Just giving you little tidbits along the way. But look at this. I would do this, right? You see what I did, right? You know what this is. I put the truncation at the beginning, right? If this is new to you, I don't have time to get you up to speed here. I've got syllabuses, endless curriculums written on this. This is like the first day of kindergarten right here. But like this right here, right? So put the truncation at the beginning. Watch this effect that happens right here. This is going to be crushed, right? You're going to literally hear it jump the track, right? We're going to switch freaking tempos, right? So just imagine like the drummer's playing this kick and snare pattern, right? And then he turns the kick and snare pattern over. It's like kick, kick, snare. Where over here it's kick, kick, snare. It's a straight up tempo change, but it's a mathematical, very possible one. Listen to it. Dude, you know that. Dan Weiss, Bastion of Sanity, cross it. This is the classic stuff, man. We got the whole world here. Like, we've mapped all this stuff out in systems for creation. Like, this stuff is just, like I said, first day of kindergarten. Anyway, so now we see how a polymeter can set up a tempo change. And obviously, it's not hard to see the exact same phenomenon over here on your polyrhythm. So this is very classic, right? It's the same, like, it's just slightly different. The point is, 5/4 polyrhythm is like one way, and then your 5/16 against 4/4 polymeter is another way, right? They're almost not totally related. It's a weird fun, this is very, we have a whole mentality, philosophy curriculum about these, like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't even need to know the answer to these questions, but like, just hear the polyrhythmic change here, right? Polyrhythmic instead of polymetric, hear that tempo shift. Right? It's straight up just like different, right? But here's the thing, right? It's the utility of it. That right there, these tempo change setups, these are classic, right? This is what you hear at the end of Lateralis where they shift the grouping, right? From 3 to 2, they just shift the grouping. Nothing changes. It's the same grid. Oldest trick in the book, right? So it's like doom, 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 got. Doom, doom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Classic, right? Oldest trick in the book. And it really is based in sort of a polymetric logic, right? Because polymeters are really just about the groupings, and they're able to facilitate that tempo change, right? Classic. Speaking of regrouping the subdivision to change the tempo, check out this one, dude, from GSM, right? This is in the David Binney solo. David Binney solo at the tempo change. Listen to it. It's the same tool trick. There is no more basic way to do it than this. Old-fashioned tempo changes. Now you start to see how you can do systematic tempo changes. And like I say, first day of kindergarten, dude, like, we're not even trying to do tempo changes all the time. That's so not the point. That's kind of why polymeters are almost more useful than polyrhythms. Okay, so I kind of associate polyrhythms with like a more like high-level musicianship concept, right? It requires a bit of a more dynamic sensibility, right? Because look at these subdivisions. They're not on the grid, right? They're just missing the grid, right? You see what I'm saying? If I'm dividing this period of time in 5 equal places, where the fundamental is divided into 4 equal places, look how these don't fit on the grid. Look where that transient happens, like a little bit after the beat, right? And it's getting progressively out of phase, right? That's the whole point of this thing, right? So it's later than it was before, right? See, farther past the beat than it was before. You know, these are the polyrhythms, right? These are harder, right? You're looking for all these weird little spots and you can't map them on the grid. You technically can though, right? You technically can create the grid. That's the Dan Weiss level. That's that Steve Coleman, that Steve Lehman, that Cole Bernie Stewart, that John Hollenbeck, right? That's that like, oh, we're just doing irrational rhythms. That's what these are, straight up full-blown irrational rhythms, right? But that's like a high-level musicianship concept where like a lot of musicians are like doing their tuplets, right? They're doing the irrational rhythms, like melody to inner urge, right? It's like purposely tuplets, right? And that's just totally fine, right? But you see the difference, right? That's not nearly as relevant and useful as like the Meshuggah concept, for example, right? That is endlessly applicable in all styles of music, right? It's not like this like jarring, like, oh my, like it was right at the end of that GSM track. It's like, yeah, we were literally trying to drop the bomb as violently as humanly possible. But like, normally you want flow and things like that. You know, you want to save those massive moments for like, you know, once every so often, right? You're building your arrangement around that classic tempo change, grouping track jump, right? GSM has so many of those. We do it over here, End of Nollis. It's actually exactly the same as the tool trick. This one, right? You're going to hear it. We're playing in 12/8 and then we just start grouping them in 4s. Or 2s is the same thing. Just jump over to the other grouping, right? Good old-fashioned 3 against 2, but it's like, okay, you're just regrouping the subdivisions and then like a new secret tempo emerges, right? Oldest trick in the book. Check it out on Nautilus. Same trick. So I associate the tempo change with it, right? And it works in both scenarios, but it's about jumping the track, right? You jump the track, right? You've got track 1, and that's your fundamental, and then you jump to track 2 and make track 2 into track 1, systematic tempo changing, right? And that is, at the end of the day, what both polyrhythms and polymeters have in common. The functional distinction would just be that polymeters, in context of like composition, are just going to be more useful, you know? You can sustain endless songs on simple polymeters. Like literally all of Western music breaks down to the good old 3-3-2 framework, right? Right? Now you see how these are polymeters, right? The good old 3-3-2 framework, oldest trick in the book, right? Literally, what is it? Right? Here's the full circle, and I end the video right here. You realize that's a special accent T high? Thanks for tuning in, guys. I will see you very soon. The next video coming out is the heaviest video I've ever made. I can promise you that. I've never made anything that even compares to it by 10,000 million miles. I'm taking it into a whole other realm with this next video. Sure, it's gonna be perfectly divisive, dude, just like the polyrhythm and the polymeter. See you next time!